So in this video, I'm going to be talking about spawn camping in War Thunder Air Arcade. Now, just to start off here, I don't advocate or support spawn camping, and but I also don't hold grudges against people that do spawn camping and stuff like that. I used to be quite mad at folks that used to do this, but not so much these days. I sort of just accept it as a fact now, so to say, sort of like a stoic kind of approach philosophically. What we have to understand is that when you click the to battle button, you've already agreed to the rules of the game, and whether you like it or not, there are no rules against spawn camping. That's the way the game has been since its release, for the most part. All right. And from what I have seen is that the tanking community, they also have the problem of spawn camping, but they don't have like much of a problem with the idea of spawn camping that the Air Arcade folks do. I think for them, because it's a lot easier to see that once you lose control of the map, there's nowhere else for the enemy to go. They're just gonna keep on going forward, and the spawn point's the next stop on the road, basically. But that's my take on that. If, looking at how different communities in War Thunder approach this. But in this video, I'm just going to be talking about what it is, how people do it, and talk about some counters to spawn camping. Because, as I've said, it's not against the rules, but it doesn't mean the end all be all that a lot of new players seem to think it is. On the forums and whatnot, you will find a lot of new players. They quit the game or uninstall the game, just because when they look at it at the first time they encounter it, they think, well, this is game breaking for the most part. There's nothing we can do against it. And well, this video is gonna dispel some of the myths behind that. But the thing about this video, and if you've watched the other videos on my channel about Air Arcade, I'm talking from the perspective of someone who's trying to win the game. All right, I'm not the guy who's interested in getting all the kills or all the ground targets or any of that. I just want to win the game, and I will do any way to achieve that. Um, I myself don't really do spawn camping, especially in air doms or airfield domination matches. Uh, I try to not do it. Every now and then I'll find myself in a position where I just so happen to be above the enemy spawn because we were flying air superiority. We wanted to gain the altitude advantage, and we got into a lot of dogfights. And the dogfights just progresses closer towards the enemy spawn. And if it happens, it happens. But I usually don't go with any like real intention in any kind of air arcade match to go in to just spawn camp. All right. So moving on. So what is spawn camping? So spawn camping is when a player sets himself up with enough altitude over the spawn point, the enemy spawn point, let's say in this case. And what he does then is that he waits for people to spawn into the game. And what this means is that as they spawn in, they are usually unaware or unprepared to be immediately attacked for the most part. And because he has the altitude advantage, even if they are prepared, there's not much they can do in the sense of shooting him down, right? If they want to shoot him down, they'd have to, a lot of variables have to come into play. They'd have to have a far superior aircraft compared to the spawn camper, or they'd have to be very, very good at experienced pilots to counter their tactics, or they could just ignore them. All right, but that's usually not the case because most of the inexperienced players will go in and see, all right, this is the threat. I've got to eliminate the threat. I've got to go up and kill this guy. That ain't how it works. Because if you try to do that, you're just playing into their trap, right? So there are two types of spawn campers that you can divide them into. There's the solo players, which are like these one or two characters that will come in, and they want to start racking up the kills on their stat card, or they just like to kill people for to get good scores, make themselves feel happy. That's one class of spawn camper. The other class are the organized squads, and they usually have like fancy squadron tags with ribbons around them. And what these folks do is that they take it upon themselves this as like a profession, so to say. They bring 4 guys in, and they all will be flying the same aircraft or a few select kind of aircraft. Usually, they're aircraft, the aircraft that are designed for boom and zoom tactics, right? So, like, if you're playing at about 4.0, and most of these organized squads they play at around BR 4.0 to 5.0, they'll be flying 109s, any of the variants of 109s, maybe a couple of FW 190s. Some go for Japanese aircraft, the high altitude interceptors. Can't recall which model aircraft. I think like Kai 44s, something like that. So the aircraft that are designed for climb rate to get up high fast, faster than any other aircraft if possible, and also have good energy characteristics to conduct boom and zoom attacks. So that's the two kind of broad camps of spawn campers, two classes of spawn campers, sorry. Yeah, the solo players and the organized squads. Now, the organized squads, the reason why they run their 4-man squads with these specific aircraft in mind is that they want to get as many kills as fast as possible. So usually what happens is that they run 2 elements of 2 ships, and 2 planes come down in first into the spawn as people are spawning in. Shoot them down. Maybe they don't get kills, maybe they do. As I've mentioned in my dogfighting video, when you're doing boom and zoom tactics, you have to have discipline. Whether you hit the enemy and shoot him down, it doesn't matter. You've got to go straight up. And these guys have the discipline to do this because they've done it so many times. They'll just go in, take shots, climb up, and as they're climbing up, anybody that's foolish enough to try to chase them, as they're climbing up to chase them, the other 2 guys come in and take anybody that's chasing them up. And the ones that they miss, as they're climbing up, they'll stall. And as they stall, the initial element does like a stall reversal hammerhead maneuver and then takes them out. So you can see here that they just like switch between offense and bait over and over again. And because they have the energy advantage and the altitude advantage, anyone trying to climb up to engage them just gets slaughtered. So that's what the organized squads do. And these are usually the characters that a lot of new players try get faced off against and get disinterested in the game, basically. So yeah. So that's the general principles behind what spawn camping and spawn campers, what they do and how it works for them. So how do you go about countering it then? So if we're going on the assumption that the point of view of approaching this game is to win the game, then it all depends on the map and the game mode, right? If it's a frontline ground strike mission, if you just go hit the targets, right? When you spawn in, just immediately dive. Immediately dive, go for speed, drop your altitude, and then go and finish off the objective in the game. Destroy the front line, take out the ground units, bleed tickets, and you'll win. Because the spawn campers are not going to lose their altitude. They're going to stay up there. All right. So you can always just dive and get away. And in the event that they decide that you are a big threat for some reason, and one of them decides to break their altitude advantage and just go straight for you, well, what you can do is most of the time your friendly airfield has pretty good AAA emplacements. They're much more deadly and accurate than the AAA out on the battlefield. So you spawn in, immediately dive, and head for your airfield, and AAA can take care of it most of the time. So that's one way of approaching that. In an airfield domination or an air domination match, however, you're going to run into some problems here because the spawn campers can technically win the game if they bleed enough tickets by shooting down enough players on your team. They can either do this by eliminating players off your roster if they manage to destroy all of their aircraft in the lineup, or if they manage to shoot down enough to bleed enough tickets from your team's ticket pool, basically. That's one way that they can impact the game. But in order for them to do this, they have to it takes time, basically, right? It's a very long process to try bleed tickets by just killing aircraft in an airfield domination. In an air domination, you can get away with it pretty fast, and it is a viable way to win the game. I'll give them that. But it's a map game mode dependent thing. So if we're just going to focus on the air domination where they can really impact the game compared to the other 3 game modes, how do you go about countering it? So initially, and what I'm about to say here, you can pretty much use it if your intention is to make sure your team doesn't get spawn camped. You can still use the tips that I'm about to present here. So what you can go about doing is you want to win air superiority over the battle zone. All right. So when you spawn in, you've got to go for altitude. All right. And if you do this as you start the game, once you reach the halfway point of the map, you will engage the enemy spawn campers at high altitude, and you'll get into a dogfight. And it's important then that you either win the dogfight or you trade with them. All right. So as I said here, win air superiority. That's you don't necessarily need to win air superiority in order to counter the spawn campers. If you manage to trade with them, all right, then you've prevented them from spawn camping. However, if you do that, they will come back. Therefore, you are going to need to respawn in and then go back up for altitude and then engage them again at high altitude, right? So it's like a air superiority kind of fight at this point. One thing you have to keep in mind is that quite a few of the spawn campers, they are pretty good fighter pilots to start off with in Air Arcade. So just because you climb up the altitude doesn't mean that you've automatically, prevented them. You've still got to fight them, all right? And if you're running against an organized squad, there's going to be 4 of them. So you have to keep that in mind. But let's say that this isn't an option for some reason, or maybe you're halfway through the match and you didn't realize until halfway through the match that there are spawn campers in the game and your team's getting absolutely destroyed. There's not much you can do in that case, especially in an air domination match. If you do have a squad of your own, you're going to have to use counter boom and zoom tactics. And I talked a little bit about this in my dogfighting video. But the way you want to go about this, and this part here is completely theoretical because I've never pulled this off with a squad before. I've never been in position to actually pull it off either. And I don't know anybody who's done it. But theoretically, if you work in 2 elements of 2 ships, you spawn in 2 guys first. They act as the bait. And these guys need to be very good pilots, and they must be in very maneuverable aircraft, okay? Or their job is to bait the initial element or the element behind them as well, if possible, to start their attack in. And these guys need to survive and try bring them down in terms of altitude a little bit lower than they should. All right. If the first element is able to do that, then you spawn in the second element from the menu, and as they spawn in, they should be in a position to be able to catch and intercept the enemy spawn campers as they're mid-attack going down. And yeah, so that's pretty much the crux of this entire video. If anybody's got any other questions or want me to go more in depth in certain areas, just comment below, and I'll get around to addressing it. Thanks for watching.